It ran for 8 seasons and was the most-watched show in America at its peak. The woman who created it and starred in it was one of the most powerful people in Hollywood and spent years being treated like she wasn't. Her co-star was beloved by everyone on set and quietly falling apart off it. And the two men everyone assumed were just comic relief turned out to be the ones who held the whole thing together longest. 8 seasons, one brewery, none of it as carefree as it looked. Number 1. Penny Marshall as Laverne DeFazio. Penny Marshall was born on October 15, 1943, in New York, and was 32 years old when she became Laverne DeFazio, the tough, street-smart brewery worker who wore a script L on everything she owned and never once apologized for exactly who she was. Laverne was the engine of the show. Marshall was the engine of everything else. What audiences watching her stumble through Milwaukee never fully registered was the level of control she was simultaneously exercising behind the camera. She co-produced, shaped storylines, and pushed the creative direction of a show that reached 60 million viewers a week at its peak. She was doing this in 1970s Hollywood, an industry that handed that kind of power to women so rarely that the exceptions were still considered news. When she moved into directing, the results spoke for themselves. Big, A League of Their Own, Renaissance Man. She became one of the most commercially successful directors of her generation, male or female, and got a fraction of the critical recognition that achievement deserved. She never complained publicly. She just kept making films that audiences showed up for. Her personal life carried real weight: a difficult first marriage, a battle with alcohol she discussed openly in later years, and a lung cancer diagnosis in 2009 that she kept largely private for years while continuing to work. Penny Marshall died on December 17, 2018, at 75 years old, with an estimated net worth of $100 million. Laverne DeFazio never needed anyone's approval. Marshall spent her entire career proving she didn't either. Number 2. Cindy Williams as Shirley Feeney. Cindy Williams was born on August 22, 1947, in Van Nuys, California, and was 28 years old when she became Shirley Feeney, Laverne's optimistic, romantic, endlessly hopeful roommate who believed in happy endings with a conviction that the world kept testing and never quite broke. Shirley was the heart of the show. Williams played that with a warmth that made even the broadest comedy feel grounded. What came after was defined by a departure that left permanent damage. She left the show in 1982 during its final seasons, following a dispute over her pregnancy accommodation on set, a conflict that became public and painful and ended her relationship with the production on deeply unhappy terms. She and Marshall never fully repaired what broke between them. That silence lasted decades. She worked steadily after theater, television, the occasional film, but never found another role that matched Shirley's cultural footprint. She spoke in later interviews about the departure with a sadness that never entirely resolved, acknowledging both the legitimacy of her position and the cost of how it ended. Cindy Williams died on January 25, 2023, at 75 years old, with an estimated net worth of $10 million. Shirley Feeney believed everything would work out in the end. Williams deserved that ending more than she got. Here's section 2 of 3. Same structure, same word discipline, same tone. Number 3. David Lander as Andrew Squiggy Squigman. David Lander was born on June 22, 1947, in Brooklyn, New York, and was 28 years old when he became Squiggy, the slicked hair, self-appointed ladies' man who burst through that apartment door with perfect, terrible timing every single episode and somehow never wore out his welcome across 8 seasons. Squiggy was the show's great comic punctuation mark. Every scene he entered got louder and funnier simultaneously. What nobody watching knew was what Lander was quietly managing underneath the performance. He was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1984, 1 year after the show ended, and kept it entirely private for 15 years. He disclosed publicly in 1999 only after his condition had progressed significantly, using the disclosure to advocate for MS research and awareness rather than retreating from public life. He wrote a memoir, Fall Down Laughing, documenting his MS journey with the same sharp wit he brought to Squiggy, turning personal devastation into something that helped thousands of people facing the same diagnosis feel less alone. He consulted on baseball operations for several minor league teams, combining a lifelong passion with a professional second act that had nothing to do with Hollywood. David Lander died on December 4, 2020, at 73 years old, with an estimated net worth of $3 million. Squiggy always arrived at exactly the wrong moment. Lander spent 20 years showing up for people who needed him at exactly the right one. Number 4, Michael McKean as Leonard Lenny Kozlowski. Michael McKean was born on October 17, 1947, in New York, and was 28 years old when he became Lenny, Squiggy's inseparable companion, slightly softer, slightly more self-aware, the one who followed every terrible idea with total loyalty and occasional genuine sweetness. Lenny and Squiggy worked because McKean and Lander had built the characters together years before the show, developing them in college performances and refining them until the timing was completely instinctive. After the show, McKean built one of the most varied careers any cast member produced. This Spinal Tap established him as a comedy writer and performer of genuine originality. Better Call Saul gave him a dramatic role, Chuck McGill, that earned Emmy nominations and demonstrated a range the brewery never required. He took the dramatic opportunity seriously and delivered completely. He survived a serious car accident in 2012 that required significant recovery, an event he addressed with characteristic directness before moving forward. He has remained one of the most consistently working and critically respected actors from the entire cast. Today in 2026, Michael McKean is 78 years old, with an estimated net worth of $16 million. Lenny Kozlowski followed Squiggy into every disaster without hesitation. McKean spent 50 years choosing his own direction entirely. Number 5, Eddie Mecca as Carmine Ragusa. Eddie Mecca was born on June 16, 1952, in Worcester, Massachusetts, and was 23 years old when he became Carmine Ragusa, Shirley's on-again, off-again boyfriend, the Big Ragu, a man of enormous self-belief and genuine talent who wanted Broadway and got Milwaukee and somehow made peace with that every single week. Carmine was the show's romantic heart, the character who wanted more than his circumstances allowed and kept reaching anyway. Mecca played that aspiration without self-pity, which was the only way it could have worked. He was a genuinely trained musical theater performer and brought real craft to every number the show gave him. The ambition wasn't performed, it was his actual biography wearing a character's name. After the show, he worked steadily in regional theater, the unglamorous, essential circuit that keeps American performance alive outside the coasts. He never found another television role that matched Carmine's visibility, but never seemed to need one. He had built his life around the work itself rather than the recognition. Eddie Mecca died on November 27, 2021, at 69 years old, with an estimated net worth of $2 million. Carmine Ragusa always believed his moment was coming. Mecca spent his whole career proving the work was the moment. Number 6, Phil Foster as Frank DeFazio. Phil Foster was born on March 29, 1914, in Brooklyn, New York, and was 61 years old when he became Frank DeFazio, Laverne's father, owner of the Pizza Bowl, the warm, gruff presence who showed up with meatballs and unsolicited life advice and meant every word of both. Frank was the show's moral anchor, the adult in the room, the man who had already made all the mistakes the girls were still working toward, and loved them too much to say so directly. Foster was already a veteran stand-up comedian and character actor before Laverne and Shirley found him. He brought 50 years of comedic instinct to Frank and wore the character as easily as a man wearing his own clothes. The relationship between Frank and Laverne was the show's emotional foundation. Everything Penny Marshall built Laverne on was rooted in what Frank had given her, and Foster played that history without ever needing to explain it. He worked consistently in the show's run without seeking attention outside it, and kept a similarly low profile after. A career built on reliability and craft, rather than profile maintenance. The kind of actor every long-running show quietly depends on and rarely properly credits. Phil Foster died on July 8, 1985, at 71 years old, with an estimated net worth of $2 million. Frank DeFazio showed up with food and love in equal measure every single week. Foster showed up with the same consistency for 50 years of work. That is its own kind of legacy. Number 7. Betty Garrett as Edna Babish. Betty Garrett was born on May 23, 1919, in St. Joseph, Missouri, and if that name sounds familiar, it should. She was Irene Lorenzo on All in the Family. She was also Edna Babish on Laverne and Shirley, the girl's landlady, eventually Frank DeFazio's wife, the woman who brought warmth and hard-won practicality to every scene she occupied. That is 2 iconic supporting roles on 2 of the most watched shows of the 1970s simultaneously, a fact that almost never appears in any discussion of either show. Garrett moved between them with the ease of a performer who had been navigating difficult terrain since the McCarthy blacklist destroyed her husband's career and damaged her own in the 1950s. By the time she reached Milwaukee, she had already survived more than most people in either cast would ever face. What she brought to Edna was a specific kind of woman, not glamorous, not exceptional, just solid and real and worth knowing. That was the character. That was also Garrett herself. She played ordinary people with extraordinary specificity and made every scene better than it found her. Betty Garrett died on February 12, 2011, at 91 years old with an estimated net worth of $3 million. Edna Babish was exactly who she appeared to be. Garrett spent her entire career making that look like the most interesting thing in the world. Number 8. What Laverne and Shirley was really saying. Laverne and Shirley ran from 1976 to 1983, 8 seasons, 178 episodes, the #1 show in America for 2 consecutive seasons at its peak. Those are the numbers. They are not the point. The point is who it was talking to. In 1976, American television was populated almost entirely by middle-class families in comfortable houses solving manageable problems. Laverne and Shirley put 2 working-class women on the #1 show in the country, women who worked a factory floor, shared a basement apartment, counted their money carefully, and dreamed anyway. That combination was radical for prime time. It still registers. The show never condescended to its characters or its audience. Laverne and Shirley were not lovable despite their circumstances. They were completely themselves because of them. Their friendship was the show's real subject, a bond between 2 women that didn't require men to validate it, didn't need resolution to justify it, and didn't apologize for existing at the center of everything. The cast paid real prices for building that. Marshall carried the weight of creative control in an industry that kept trying to take it from her. Williams paid with a friendship that never fully recovered from how it ended. Lander carried a private illness through years of public performance. Mecca built a career in rooms that never matched the one he started in. What they built together told an entire generation of working-class women that their lives were worth the center of the screen. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. That's Laverne and Shirley, then and now. A show that put 2 working-class women at the top of American television and never once made them apologize for it. Drop a comment. Which story hit you hardest? And here's the real question. Do you think television today tells working class women their lives are worth watching? Or has that promise quietly disappeared? Because the more you look at what Marshall and Williams built together, the more important that question becomes. If this one stayed with you, you already know what to do.